1st, December. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name's Aireonna. Today I'm here with Marco from Clutch Team Sports. Happy Friday, everyone. Happy Friday, Marco. How are you doing? I know you got some wedding stuff going on. Coming up close, I just heard. How you feeling?
Feeling great in terms of excited for the wedding, but all the little details and having to wrinkle out and make sure contracts are signed and stuff like that. That's the part that's like, man.
Yeah, you don't think about the logistics, or at least I don't until you get there. Did you get to like the one part of getting married that sounds fun to me is that you get to like try all the food and stuff. So did you guys like do the whole cake tasting and all that?
So that's been an issue. So the organization that we're going through for food, um, they didn't they had us on their calendar, but they had never reached out to us. Um,
Oh, you muted yourself.
so when I would reach out to them, what would happen was is they would give me the runaround, like, oh, blah blah blah. We'll get you closer to the wedding date. So we haven't tasted food. We're hoping to do that Monday. That's been a big stress too. Um,
Yeah,
2 weeks.
that's kind of close.
Um, so that's been fun. Um, but I
It'll
trust the
work
company
out
we're
though.
going through. It's a good place. Heard very great things about it, about the company that's catering the event. Um, but I'm very excited. Like that's what we were excited for. Like all the dessert and cake and everything. Or shout out to my aunt. So if you guys ever need Bay Area, California people, if you guys need food for desserts, Moni, Dulce by Moni,
Mhm.
she gets down. She's catered huge events, celebrity events and stuff like that. So if you guys are looking for great cakes, dessert, anything for your
Oh, I
event,
love that.
she's the one. So shout out to my aunt Monica for that. Getting down for us. So that work. I know for sure. Like I've tasted everything she's
You
made
have
before,
at
so I'm
least
like,
that.
yeah, I'm guaranteed that's gonna be legit. So that's what I'm
That's so
excited
fun.
about.
I love that. I'm gonna hit her up just because I have the world's largest sweet tooth in the entire planet. Are you like a vanilla or a chocolate person?
I'm
I'm a chocolate.
chocolate. Yeah,
I'm a chocolate person. I never understand people who are vanilla.
yeah,
Like I'm like,
chocolate.
you're choosing like chocolate is like the baseline is
Yeah.
vanilla, and then they add stuff to make it better. Why would you ever choose just the regular vanilla? Um, I went through a carrot cake phase recently too.
Carrot cake's good
I
too.
just
Carrot cake's good.
yeah. I had like I had like a little mini garden and I grew a bunch of carrots this summer and I was just like making like carrot cake bread because
Okay.
it felt weird to like make a cake in the middle of summer. But we'll stop talking about desserts now and get into the talking about the 49ers. Haven't They had a really fun game last week and they have an interesting challenge maybe. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I have a hard time because when I say challenge, I'm like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And then I think back to the games that they've lost, and I'm like, don't have that mindset. At least I hope they don't. But they definitely have an interesting rest of the season coming up and a challenging second half of the season, specifically if they want to make it to the Super Bowl and they want to have, they want to be at their peak of their powers and energy by the time they get to the Super Bowl. So seems like a lot coming up. I'm very excited to watch the 49ers. I feel like this is kind of when the season kicks up a little bit, like for more of the casual fans. Like my dad and I from day one were watching like preseason, but around this time is kind of like when some of my uncles start, they're like, oh, okay, so like what's the 49ers record? How they doing? So I feel like more casual fans start coming around about this time, especially around the holidays and with the 49ers playing, not to look ahead. But are you excited for the rest of the season? And do you have any concerns or excitements coming up with maybe how they played in the beginning of the season? They're a little bit of lull that they have or that they had, and then seeing them last week. Do you kind of think that maybe they're going to go on a run for the second half?
Yeah, I'm excited because I'm the 49ers. They obviously they play the Eagles as I'm getting ready to head out to my honeymoon. So I'm gonna figure out how the hell do I watch
Oh,
that while I'm getting to the airport at the same time because
Where are
that's
you
the
going to
game I've been
honeymoon?
excited for. We're going to Jamaica, so
I've been to Jamaica. I love it. You're gonna have so many. It's so warm. There's bugs. There's so many bugs. There's so many bugs. They'll
what
bring
part of
all the
Jamaica
bug
though?
spray. Uh, I have
Because
no idea.
we're not going into Jamaica. We're going to a resort in Jamaica. So we're not going into Jamaica. At least that's not the
You're
plan,
gonna
but
have
we may.
so much fun.
Um, but so I'm looking at the schedule. I'm like, so this week I'm good. The following week is on Thanksgiving, so I'm good. But then looking at it, I'm like, dang, I'll be in I'll be in Jamaica. I'll be headed to Jamaica, and then I'm good until the 10th, which I believe the 10th is the Sunday that I'll be already in I'll be in Miami. So when we come back, we're going to Miami. So I'll be watching it in Miami. So I'm excited because I'm gonna go watch the 49ers and other
Oh, you muted.
so watching them in Miami, I'm excited to watch the Niners while I'm in Miami. Gotta find a bar while I'm out there. But I
Oh,
think the
I've
Niners are
never
gonna
been
go
to
on a run.
Miami. I want to go to
Well, I
Miami.
can't
You're
hear you.
you're
Let me do it.
you're gonna
Let
be
me fix
all
something real
over.
quick.
Okay. Anyways, Marco's waiting. Have you guys in the comments? Have you guys been to Miami? Have you been to Jamaica? Marco's going on a world tour during the
All right,
second
can you
half
hear
of this
me?
season. Yeah, I can hear you.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? In the comments, let us know if you can hear us. Maybe. Oh, do you want me to? I can't hear you. But okay. Anyways, in the comments, maybe you guys could let me know if you guys are excited for the second half of the season. I feel like this is kind of when the football season kind of amps up, and all these earlier games that maybe we'll sleep through, they start to matter when you look at the record and the number one seed coming up. Brock Purdy has officially played for an entire season. I saw a lot of reporters asking him yesterday about kind of reflecting about his first game, having 17 games now. Marco just sent me a message. Hold on. He said he's backstage. Hello, Marco.
This is the
Marco, can
only
you hear me?
time my phone ever does this when I'm going live with you.
What is it? Is it something
So
about the internet?
my phone's always like, "Do you want to connect to your MacBook?" Like, no.
And he's muted again. Poor guy. Oh, oh, oh. And you're
So
muted again.
I'm back. I should be back now. I'm good.
Perfect. Perfect. I was asking you about the rest of the season coming up, and you were telling me you're gonna have a little bit of a difficult challenge watching some of the important games coming up.
Yeah, so it's gonna be fun to watch them because obviously watching one of them headed to the airport. The other one I'll be watching in Miami. But just looking at the Niners, like the way they played last week, the team just looks revived. They look energized. They look different. It's a different vibe from them right now. So that's what I'm excited about to watch the 49ers moving forward. And when I look at the Niners, the biggest things I'm looking at one are the defensive line. How great the defensive line looked with the addition of Chase Young. Um,
They
the O
looked
line.
so. I
Go
was
ahead. Go ahead.
just to interrupt. They looked so. I feel like I've had this debate with Eric Crocker a lot because he's kind of been like the defense is getting way too much shit during this like slow start, and I understood what he meant like from points wise because they only had one game where they gave up like over 24 points. But to me, it was always the eye test. Like even if they were only giving up 24, 22 points, whatever it was, I was like, they look different. They don't feel, they don't have the energy and like um enthusiasm and grit that the 49ers
Yeah.
normally do. And they looked back. They looked back on their last game. And I think you're right. I think that all starts with the defensive line and with Nick Bosa. When you're paying a guy, I mean the Bengals season, it's over right now basically because Burrow's out because they're giving all their money to Joe Burrow. And for the 49ers, instead of that being a quarterback, that's Bosa. Bosa is the guy, he's the quarterback of the defense. And when he's not showing up, it influences every single other aspect of that line. And
I
I
think
think it
more.
was cool.
I think I agree with Croc though because even though the defense was giving up yards and stuff like that, they weren't giving up points. What the issue was the offense scoring 17 and 3 games in a row. Like that was the issue is the offense not scoring. If you have a defense, so for example, if you have a defense and you're like, hey, we're gonna play against some playoff teams, which I think some of the teams we played, are playoff caliber in terms of when you look at the Cleveland Browns, you look at the Minnesota Vikings with Kirk at the time. I thought Kirk could have led them to a playoff game. When you look at them, when you only give up 17, 22, and then the Bengals put up obviously 31, but that got out of hand towards the end of the game. It wasn't nothing crazy, but when you look at it, it's like, hey, you offense, like this is technically a playoff like game. You got to put points up because in the playoffs, your defense is going to be playing up against very good offenses.
Way
So this
better.
is
Yeah.
the top 14 teams in the league at that point. So the defense isn't going to hold these teams to 10 points a game during the playoffs. That's where the offense needed to come in and put up some points. So I agree with him in the sense of defense they were bending to the extreme and it looked ugly, but they weren't breaking. They weren't giving up the points that were they weren't getting dropped 30 points on them or 40 points on them weekly. So I agree. But looking at how the defense was, I think the bigger surprise to me was Javon Hargrave stepping up. The way he played
He
last week,
did.
he
Yeah.
finally came up and showed up. When you're getting paid $20 million a year, you got to show up like that. Now, Nick Bosa came alive. Chase Young, though, like the Niners
That
have to
was a
re-sign
good
him.
addiction. That was a good addition. Like, I know it's only been 1 week, so who knows? But the way that that was able to open up Bosa, the way that I felt like they played off and motivated each other, it's really it's silly because these people are making hundreds of millions of dollars, and when you look at them, you think that you need to have, they should have that intrinsic motivation by themselves, but at the end of the day, this is a game and it is a job. And when you think about yourself and how you perform when you're playing with your friend or when you're hanging out with your friends or when you're competing with a peer in your work, it really does motivate you to try harder, even if you should have that intrinsic drive within yourself. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like we saw that, just in the little clips. They even had like voice clips of the two of them talking back and forth, kind of being like, I was the one that got him first. No, I was the one that got him first. And you hope that they carry. I think as long as health permits for Chase Young, everything that I've heard about him is that he's been really good. And it seems like maybe those. I know Mike Silver wrote an article about his attitude or whatever. To me, that's a Washington problem. Trent Williams has talked a lot about the culture in Washington. I feel like stuff like that doesn't fly under Chris Kosarek. And you're right. I'll ask you that. Do you think that they'll try to find a way to extend him if
You
his
have to. You
play
have to.
continues?
There's no way you got to make it work. It was funny because you and we talked about how the addition of Chase Young was going to be like working with your best friend. Like it's different. Like when you're working with your best friend, you're in an environment that's healthy for you. You play better. You look re energized. That's what Nick Bosa looked like. You look re energized. You look at the videos on them on the bench. You see Chase Young
Yep.
lean his head on Nick Bosa for a little while. Like it's comfortable. He's comfortable right now, and he wasn't comfortable
Yeah.
in Washington. Obviously, there was a lot of things going on there from the moment he was drafted.
Fair, to be
Um,
honest.
absolutely. So when you look at it, like when you're going through things mentally, especially when you're dealing with an injury, you're not going to be playing up to your best potential. You're recovering from a big injury. But looking at what they looked like, there's you got to do what you got to do to re-sign them. Pairing him and Nick Bosa together for the next 5 years, you're able to start reducing a little bit on the interior, because obviously you're not going to want to pay uh, two defensive tackles in the 20 million range. But I
Yeah.
would do everything in my power to keep Chase Young around for a long time, because you give up a third round pick. Now, if you let him walk, you probably get a third round comp back, but you gotta re-sign him. To me, it's a must. Like if you don't re-sign him, you're letting go a high quality player, and that's what you don't want to do. In my opinion, I personally would make it work, and in the long run, push it back where it's a everything is back ended on the contract. And if you have to eventually trade Debo Samuel, not if you don't extend Talanoa Hufanga, like there's a lot of things that are in play. I'm like, I personally am prioritizing Chase Young over Hufanga, who's an All Pro, who I could
I love that.
potentially
Yeah.
trade.
He's gonna get like I feel like Huff when you're in his position, those guys get paid a lot, and because he's already had an All Pro selection, I don't think, and I
Mhm.
love Hufunga's attitude, but I don't think maybe he's playing up to his hype. Not that he's not playing well, but I think with the Troy Polamalu, like he has a bit of a reputation, and I think those things can add money to the contract that you're going to end up getting.
Absolutely.
I've heard some people hypothesize maybe that's why Jair Brown is here. I know that obviously Gibson, they might have to have someone like come and fill in for that spot too, because he's obviously older. But you're right. Do you think that they'll have to do do you think, because you're talking about re-signing Chase Young, that it would have to be an either or for Brandon Ayuk or Chase Young? Or
Yeah.
do you think that that's something they could work out with, because the way that Debo's contract flows, I think next year they can have both Ayuk and Debo around the same price, and it might be the next year that they have to make a decision about that.
So I think Brandon Ayuk's around a long time. The reason is I was explaining to Frau who was a buddy as we're texting back and forth. I might have been Jesse Naylor and David Lichty who we were texting and we're talking about how Brandon Ayuk um, should be around or what do they do in this situation. I'm like, to be honest, I've always been pro player. I think players should sit out and get their money. But at the same time, if I'm trying to look at what's going on and look at the situation, if I'm the 49ers, I look at Brandon Ayuk and I'm like, well, tough luck. You're on your 5th-year option. I'm going to figure out how to extend Chase Young, and then we'll come to you. Once we figure out Chase Young and we have money, we'll move around money. We'll get your contract done. Don't worry about that. I think with his 5th-year option, 5th-year, I think the starting point is around 15 million because obviously that's where his 5th-year option is. I think he's going to get in the 20s. I think that's how good of a receiver he is. But at that time, once you're discussing that, a lot of things come into play. He might request a trade. He might do this, might do that.
Yeah.
I'm allowing him to request his trade. If I'm the team, okay, cool. If you could give me
what
back,
kind of offer he would
yeah,
bring
if you could
back,
give me
that makes
back,
sense.
if you could give me back X, Y, Z, um, cool. We'll think about it. But at this
Yeah.
point, you're a 49er. You're on your 5th-year option, and we could tag you next year if we want. That's how I'm seeing it. If I'm the 49ers,
Yeah.
I don't
I
have
like
to
that.
move you. I don't have to extend you this offseason. You are a 49er. It sucks that we drafted you in the first round and there's a 5th-year option where we don't have to extend you. That's how I'm looking at it as a team perspective. But if I'm Brandon Ayuk, I'm like, I'm your best receiver on this roster. You better pay me, and rightfully
Yeah.
so. So if he requests a
It'll be
trade,
interesting. It'll be interesting to me how fans kind of receive that if he does kind of fight back. Just because I feel like I've been so interested in, and this is kind of a conversation for the off season, but in how the way these different contracts have been perceived when it comes to the way that Debo handled things, and then Bosa. I wonder how fans will react with Brandon Ayuk, because I kind of do feel like he's a bit of a fan favorite. But if I'm putting myself in my head, when Debo did get that contract, Debo was a giant fan favorite up until people kind of noticed that he was disgruntled. And in my opinion, Brandon Ayuk is their most consistent wide receiver, but he hasn't shown the ability, and that's bad wording. He hasn't been given the opportunity, maybe, to show the
opportunity.
ability to take over games in the same way that Debo has. Now, I don't necessarily think that's like a con- condemn condemnation. That's not a word. I don't think that that's Brandon Ayuk's fault necessarily. I think that might be the way this offense is set up with this quarterback, with this play caller, and the things that they like to call it. The scheme is more set for Debo to be able to take a guy who plays like Debo to be able to take over than Brandon Ayuk, because I know there's so many metrics that he's one of the most wide open receivers, and in the red zone. Steph Sanchez pointed this out to me. This was before the game that just happened, so these stats might be skewed a little bit, but Debo, right behind Christian McCaffrey, has the most red zone targets out of any player on the 49ers team. And he actually
Yeah,
doesn't have a touchdown from the red zone. His only touchdowns have came outside of the red zone, where Brandon Ayuk has a touchdown on every single one of his red zone opportunities where he's been given the ball in the red zone. He just has only been targeted in the red zone at that point. Once again, this was before last week. At that point, it was 3 targets that were in the red zone. He's obviously been targeted more than that outside of the red zone. But I thought that was kind of, I'm like, Kyle Shanahan, why are you not, or Brock Purdy, whatever that
what's
communication
crazy?
is, why are you not giving him the opportunity when he's showing you that when given those chances, he's going to make you right? I mean, I think you and I have had that same discussion when it comes to George Kittle. It's like, hey, when you give him the opportunity, he steps up to the plate. Wouldn't that like, isn't that how football's supposed to work? Like, you passed the
Yeah.
test, so now I'm going to give you more. Where I feel like in Kyle's mind, he's like, good job for passing the test. Come back to you in 3 weeks. I'm going to throw 4 more targets to Debo and hand the ball off to Christian McCaffrey 27 more times. So,
And what's crazy is the conversation got brought up, right, about Brandon Ayuk a few weeks ago because of Larry Krueger, who essentially said he's having a midseason because of his expectations he had in August, right? Next
mhm.
following week, they throw a touchdown pass to him. They target him in the red zone.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah,
things
yeah,
happen when you target great players. Like good things happen when you put the ball in great players' hands. And in my opinion, I think Brandon Ayuk is the best receiver on the team, and it's not close. It's no shade to Debo Samuel. He's a hell of a receiver. But I think the 49ers have a top 10 receiver in Brandon Ayuk. Like, and it's not if you give him the opportunities and you're starting to target him like a top 10 receiver, you're gonna see those numbers increase drastically. The fact that he's been targeted um, more than 7 times, only 2 times this year, or 3 times this year out of all those games is insane. One of the games was the first game of the season. He was 8 for 8, 8 catches on 8 targets for 129 and 2 touchdowns. The next couple of games where he's targeted more than 7 times was the Cleveland game where Brock played really bad. He had 76 yards. And then the next time he was targeted more than the 7 times, he was 5 for 9 for 109 in that Cincinnati Bengals game. So when you target him, he has been proven the more you target Brandon Ayuk in a game, the more he gets going. So for me, I think Brandon Ayuk is going to be around for a very long time. I think Kyle loves him for his offense. So I'm very excited to see Brandon Ayuk in this kind of offense for a long time, especially um, with Brock Purdy. They're going to continue to develop more chemistry. You may start seeing the go ball implemented a little bit more now that Brock Purdy's feeling a little more comfortable throwing it to George Kittle.
yeah.
You might see that implemented. That's a very strong suit of Brandon Ayuk. But I'm excited to see the team going forward because they have a tough matchup against Tampa Bay's defense. From what I remember, Tampa plays a lot of man to man. I have not looked at numbers recently. As I said, I've been really busy with wedding stuff and work.
Yeah.
But looking at what Tampa has done in the past, it's a lot of man to man, a lot of blitzing, sort of. So for me, looking at it is who's the go to guy in this situation? Quick passes because you're going to be a man to man. You got to win your quick routes. Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, those guys should have huge games in my opinion.
I do know that Tampa has really good linebackers. Fred Warner on his podcast said that he feels like it's going to be like a battle every time they meet up against Tampa. That he feels like it's like a duo battle. Like Fred Warner and Trey Greenlaw want to be the best linebackers in the NFL, and in my opinion, they are by a wide margin right now. But he showed a lot of respect to the linebackers that they have over there in Tampa. So could mean some risky balls from Brock Purdy potentially if they're really good on really sticky on coverage and get him in some because I think one of Brock Purdy's best qualities can also be the one that gets him in trouble the most, which is unlike Jimmy and unlike other players that we've seen in this offense, he does give his receivers opportunities to kind of make him right. So he doesn't necessarily always, even though he is pretty accurate. Sometimes he'll kind of take chances and throw a ball short, throw a ball a little bit behind, throw a risky ball into triple coverage, like he did with that first, not interception, with that first touchdown last week. And I do think potentially that could get him in a little bit of trouble against Tampa. They're not number one in takeaways or anything like that, but they do take the ball away when given the opportunity. They seem to catch it. Um, do you think offensively, how do you think Tampa's offense with Baker Mayfield, who Kyle Shanahan gushed about today in the press conference when he was asked why he thought Baker was talented. I found this interesting because I'm always interested in Kyle Shanahan's like site. Like I want to know how he feels about Brock Purdy, honestly. And when he was talking about Baker Mayfield today, and he was like he yesterday had said Baker Mayfield was a really talented quarterback and he was a really good quarterback or something like that. So he's asked to expound upon that today, and he said, he's making smarter decisions with the football now than he was. He's running their system pretty well, and then he went straight in. He kind of like when you're passionate about something, you kind of talk fast. He kind of did that when he started talking about Baker's ability to not only hit the quick passes, but he was like, he can throw it 60 yards down the field just like this. And like, he
Mhm.
has a really talented arm and he has no problem like taking the deep shot. And he kind of like went on a little like ramble about that. And I was like, oh, is that important to you, Kyle? Interesting.
Now it's important.
You know? Yeah. So I was like, are you being honest here? Or, which, if you're being honest, then I feel like maybe part of you sometimes side eyes Brock Purdy for not having that ability. Or you're not being honest and you're just kind of giving some BS excuses because you're like, hey, Baker Mayfield's not that good, but I can't come up here and say that. Um, Offensively, now they do have Mike Evans, who I know is older, but he's made excellent passes or excellent catches. He's the quarterback now. Actually, Baker's so bad that they let Mike Evans throw the ball. They did do that earlier, but that was just on a little trick play. But who do you think is going to pose some challenges? Who do you think will be covering Mike Evans on this secondary? And do you think that that'll be a tough matchup? Obviously, the defense performed so well last week. I don't necessarily think holding offenses to 3 points is sustainable. How do you see the 49ers defense going against Tampa's offense?
So Tampa's offense, it's a mixture of a lot of things. They try to get the ball out of Baker's hands quick. Rashad White is a very great check down running back who is able to get out of the backfield. So I don't know who they decide to put on him, whether they put a linebacker on him, safety on him, depending on the coverage and the look. But I think Treverius Ward actually matches up very well against Mike Evans. The reason I think that is Treverius Ward is a faster. He's able to get his hands on bigger receivers. So when you're faster than a receiver, your time clock isn't sped up. You're able to not panic. You're not getting that panic mode. So you're going to see him be a lot more physical. He plays a lot more physical when he's bigger receivers. Usually the refs will let them push and push it a little bit more. So that's the kind of receiver he does great against. Now, for me, the interesting and the X factor from the Tampa Bay offense is Chris Godwin out of the slot.
Yeah.
Now, whoever's in the slot, whether it's Isaiah Oliver, whether that's Fred Warner, sometimes lines up in the slot, or if they decide to put Denominal Lenore back in the slot, that's a tough matchup. I think, in my opinion, Chris Godwin's one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. He's that good of a receiver, so when you line him up on whoever it is, it's a tough matchup. So, especially when you have the tight bunch formations from Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, tough matchup. Big guys, strong guys. Um, it's going to be a tough matchup if Ambry Thomas is out there. I'm gonna be real. I thought Ambry Thomas had a great game last week.
So did I.
Um,
But do
but
you
if
think that that's because AFC teams maybe don't know to target? Like, I do wonder if that was against the Rams, if they would have targeted him a little bit more, and maybe we would have seen a little bit more panic from Ambry Thomas right away.
I don't think so. I don't think it's an AFC thing. I think when you're because even most coaches know like they do a scouting report on everyone. Like they don't just like watch the
Yeah.
starters. Potentially, if someone goes down, you got to know who's coming in for him, right? So, I think it's more so that he was playing great covers. Like I went back to watch just him, and he was having some. It was some of it was teach tape. Like you go back and you could
I
like
love that.
show this to a younger kid. I'm like, this is how you're supposed to play corner. That's how good it was at times.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but when you have him going up against Mike Evans, who is a
Yeah.
strong, tall, physical receiver, Ambry Thomas has struggled at the catch point. Now, if you throw it up, Ambry Thomas, is he going to win that? I don't know. Um, Same thing with Chris Godwin. So for me, I'm just looking at it. I'm like, okay, how do the Niners match up? They match up well. Defense of line is going to have a better test against a better offensive line, in my opinion. But I think the 49ers are going to be able to take away what Baker wants to do. Baker wants to get the ball out quick. If the
Mhm.
49ers could do the
Yeah, he
same
has one
things.
of the quicker releases in the NFL right this year. He's been getting that's been what they've been doing to negate that. I think he has 17 quarterback sacks, which is like the same as Brock Purdy. So it's not like the most, it's not the least, but a way that they've been negating other teams' pass rushes, which people are already doing against the 49ers to kind of try to stop Nick Bosa. And
Mhm.
now they're definitely going to do it to try to stop the combination of Nick Bosa and Chase Young and Armstead and Javon Hargrave is to get that ball out quickly. But yeah, if hopefully the 49ers stick with more of that man coverage, because I felt like that made, at least last week, that made the quarterback hold the ball a little bit longer.
And just for James T's a comment, could you guys refresh my memory on Ambry Thomas's history? What did he do so much wrong? So essentially, Ambry Thomas during his rookie year, I thought he played well. He
Me too.
struggled at the catch
He's
point.
promising.
Yeah, it was
And he
something
was
like
always
he
like
could build on.
almost, he was like in position. He sorry, in my opinion, his first year he was always like almost there, or even sometimes there. Like, I don't know. I was really looking forward to him going into his second year. That's
Yeah,
when more trouble came.
same. I thought he was played well his rookie year. I thought he had opportunities to make plays. He just didn't do it. He was in position, just didn't make the play. Didn't execute the finish of the play. Year two struggled in training camp a little bit. Everyone thought he was going to be the starting corner, or he was going to compete for a starting corner spot. He ended up didn't. And then he struggled a little bit in camp. Struggled when he was on the field and it was more so of everything now at that point. It wasn't like there was no flashes at that point. It was everything was going wrong for him, and it was confidence the and when you talk to corners and cornerback coaches, they all tell you the same thing. Putting a corner in a tough situation where he doesn't get the reps and doesn't get the feel for a game and everything like that, they tend to struggle. So now that he's back on the field, he's played well. How does he add to that? Like, so that's what I'm excited to see about. But it wasn't necessarily that he screw up so much. It was that his rookie year was promising. He had some nice flashes. He had a big interception to seal us, send us into the playoffs, week 18. And then outside of that, it was kind of like up and down. Like he would look flash a little bit, and then he would go back down. So a little bit of everything for Ambry Thomas, but I'm hoping he could be that bounce back guy.
Yeah, absolutely. It seemed like going into his sophomore year, that if he would have taken a step up, he would have still been a starter. Unfortunately, other players passed him. I think that offseason was a little bit difficult. I know a lot of the other corners put a lot of effort into refining their game, and Ambry Thomas had some stuff off the field wise that he needed to focus on, which was actually really commendable work that he was doing. But I think he got passed up, and then when he was given opportunities after that, he was kind of put in, maybe not put in bad positions, but he wasn't able to live up to the moment for a while. So he started getting a reputation of, whenever he did get his slim opportunities, he was kind of getting he was always giving up, kind of being like, get him off the field. But they took him off the field for a little bit. They gave him another opportunity a couple weeks later, and so far he showed up to the plate, and that is something that he should be extremely proud of. A lot of people, they can get in their heads. They're like, okay, I was given, I could have had a starter spot. I let it slip away, and you can get in your head. I think especially at that corner position, so much of it is confidence and attitude. So I think it shows a lot that he was able to kind of come back. And I thought that little moment, I know the sideline stuff doesn't matter that much with Steve Wilks, but I thought that moment after Ambry Thomas made that good play where he kind of went up to Wilks, and he was, telling Wilks to remember that and remember what he just did, and, that Wilks can lead on him and he can rely on him. I thought,
Is
whether
that
or
what
not
he
that's,
said? Did he say remember? Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
saw the
yeah.
play, but I
The
didn't look. I
camera,
didn't look at
the
it.
camera like zoomed into him, and he was like, remember that. I did that. Remember that. I need you. And he like grabbed him by the shirt. He's like, I need you to remember that. I
Damn.
thought that was dope. I thought
See,
that was really cool.
that's a player calling his shot right there. Like, hey, like,
Yeah.
and that's a cool because Steve Wilks. So if you go back to training camp, Steve Wilks worked very closely with the corners. He worked very closely with Ambry in particular. Steve Wilks is that corner defensive back specialist. That's what he's been known for throughout his career. And he worked very closely with Ambry. So the fact that Ambry is made those big plays and had a great game and finally telling Wilks, like, you can rely on me, bro. Like, let me play. Like, let me go. I'm excited to see him play now. Like, he had a tough story coming out of college. He had sickness that dropped him. Been a fan of his. Great family. He has a tremendous family. I've had the pleasure to talk to them and meet them and everything. Great family. I'm rooting for him. I've been rooting for him for a couple years. At one point, it was getting ugly where I didn't think he was going to be on the roster. But rooting for him. Hopefully, he can continue the progress. Hopefully, he could step up and be the 49ers corner that they've been missing to allow Dima to go inside.
There you go. Now, how do you feel about someone just commented Ward, just Ward? How do you feel about Ward? Who do you think is going to line up against him? He's been having a bit of a down year compared to his standard, I feel like, but I also know that he was suffering from an injury this offseason. But I've been a little bit disappointed by him when we talk about guys who have been paid on this 49er roster. Obviously, he's not making anything close to what the D linemen are making, but I feel like he's been more of a 1B than a 1 recently. How are you feeling about Ward if you were going to give him like a middle of the season assessment?
I think the thing that a lot of people do is and I think it's more so, I don't, not necessarily like fans or whatever, but I feel like we tend to forget that the other teams get paid too. Like, and he's going up against some of the better receivers. Like he tries to challenge himself. Obviously they don't travel across the field. He does have a big cap hit next year, but they could get out of that contract, I believe, with a post 6 date release, if they wanted to save cap, if they don't like what he's showing. But I thought he's been playing well. I mean, when you watch him, he's obviously, the penalties are what have been killer.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, the NFL is calling everything. Like,
Yeah, they are.
I feel bad for defensive players because you can't really do much. Like, the receiver will extend his arm completely, like shove,
What was
and it's
that?
not called.
What was that play? It was last night. The Ravens and the Bengals. It was against Odell Beckham, and it was just like so unfair. I felt like for I don't know if you watched
I
the
didn't.
game.
I didn't watch the game. I didn't. I'll be honest. I didn't watch the game. I was out and about
To
running errands.
to be fair, it turned into a dud because everyone got injured. I hope everyone heals up, but
It's rough.
who do you think's gonna win if you had to choose between the 49ers and Tampa? Do you feel
Tampa.
strongly? You think Tampa's gonna win?
I'm just kidding. I just wanted to see your
Oh my
reaction.
god, I
No,
was
no, no. The Niners. The Niners are.
like you said that with you were like deadpan. That was good. I'm
Not.
gullible.
It's not gonna be close. Not gonna be
Yeah, I
close.
don't think so.
I
It
think
wasn't
Kyle.
close when they had Tom Brady, and now
What
they
I
have not Tom Brady.
what
So
I think's gonna happen though is, but the good thing is they won a ring with Tom Brady, so
yeah,
we could have had
that's
that,
fair.
but we didn't.
Yeah,
Instead,
it's
Jimmy
true.
Garoppolo was better. But
It's just Jimmy
we're not gonna go
Garoppolo.
there right now. But looking at it, I think the good thing and the positives I see from this is, the 49ers are just a better team. Kyle Shanahan's going to look at what Houston did to them, attacking them deep, and he's going to pick them apart deep. Their secondary isn't great. It has decent. They have some players in there, but watching them, it looks like they're not coached well. Like, be straight up, like they're not coached well defensively. There's at least their
Yeah.
secondary. Most of the big plays, I went back
Todd
to just to
Bowles.
watch. Absolutely, Todd Bowles is interesting because he's a good defensive coordinator, but he hasn't been a good head coach.
Yeah.
But going back and I was watching the CJ Stroud performance where he lit them up. It was quarters where he was lining them up in quarters, attacking them deep. You don't see that in quarters. Like, quarters is literally to prevent you from attacking deep. The safeties were nowhere to be found, and that's to me where I was like, damn, like these safeties either aren't being coached right, they're reading the plays wrong. I don't know what's going on. But their secondary, I think Brandon Ayuk can have a big game. I think George Kittle could have a big game. Their secondary isn't like I'm saying, like it's not coached well, but they have players that can make plays, and that's where things can get dicey. Because if you think you could attack certain things, and don't get me wrong, CJ Stroud is a top 10 quarterback in this league
Yeah,
right
he's
now
doing
as we
phenomenal.
speak.
Good for
He is
D'Amico, man.
he is probably in the MVP race, if we're being honest. Now, he has more talent than Brock, so he can make some of the throws that he was making some of the throws that he was making. They were phenomenal with that game. So I'm going off of it, looking at it. I think Kyle Shanahan picks them apart, and we see a lot of guys running open. I think the 49ers run away with this one. Christian McCaffrey should be used heavily in the screen game. Debo should be used in the screen game. It really shouldn't be a close game. And if it is, we got issues if the 49ers offense isn't scoring or the defense is giving up points to Baker. Now they have weapons, don't get me wrong. Rashad White's respectable as a running back. But they have good receivers. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, two really good receivers. But if we like play with fire, I'm gonna be shocked because if we lose to them or it's close, I'll be shocked. Like I'll be like, whoa. I'll look at the Niners. Put it this way: I will look at the Niners a tad differently, and the reason I will look at them
Yeah.
a tad differently is because you just came off a 3-game losing streak. You embarrassed a playoff team and with Trevor Lawrence at the quarterback position. You are now playing a team that is not as good as the Jacksonville Jaguars, but you make it close. Taking, as Fred Warner said, we're taking every game week by week. If you're taking it week by week, you're playing this team like they are the best team in the NFL. You should whip their ass because they're not that good. That's just how I'm looking at it. I think it's going to be at least a 14-point game. We win by 14. I don't really give scores, but I think we win by 14. I know the spread is 10, so I'm not a betting man. But if I was to bet against the spread, I'm taking the over. I think the Niners are going to win by more than 10 points.
I love that. I love that confidence. I think you're right. I think first of all, it would be a letdown for me because Fred Warner talked about even though there obviously were scheme adjustments that they made on defense, but Fred Warner said that in his opinion, the number one reason that the 49ers performed so much better coming out of the bye week was because it was a shift in their mentality and like a mental switch that they made. So it would make me pretty disappointed if they felt like they had to kind of be these underdogs that like
Which is,
how it would be pretty annoying if they had to be up and down all season in order to be successful. You kind of
yeah.
hope that they used that last game to be like, hey, we need to set a foundation and a standard of what we're going to play like for the rest of the season. And it doesn't matter who our competition is. We're not going to play down to them. We're going to play and keep this same intensity throughout. Like, it would be nice to me if they were up, by 2-3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and they can start pulling out guys because it's going to be a short week. To me, that's what you want to do. You want to get Christian McCaffrey out of the game as soon as
Mhm.
possible. So I hope that they
I
kind
don't
of
think that'll
come
happen.
out.
Kyle doesn't sound like he wants to play anyone else but Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
He asked, there was a question asked about Jordan Mason. He was like, "Why? Why would I play him?" Like,
I
great
thought that
question.
question.
Great
I thought that was
question.
a phenomenal question. Let's
Um,
talk about that. What is up with why does Kyle Shanahan today? He was asked why is Jordan Mason number 3 on the depth chart, and he kind of scoffed at the question as if it was ridiculous to assume that maybe there's something that Jordan Mason couldn't do or if he's on his bad side in order to not play. And he just was like, oh, well, he's just number 3. And when asked, okay, he's leading the running backs in the amount of yards per carry he gets. So why is he number 3 above Elijah Mitchell, who only has 2.5 yards per carry? Kyle Shanahan then referenced Elijah Mitchell's success with the team
in the past,
in the past, which to me is not necessarily what you should be making decisions on for your present day future team. Um, Unfortunately, I feel like Kyle was a little bit defensive for the question, so we didn't get a great answer. Also, maybe Kyle, maybe it is like I've heard outside of that press conference that has something to do with Jordan Mason not knowing pass protection and stuff. Maybe he feels like it's kind
but
of
the thing
throwing
too though
him
is,
under the bus to say that. So maybe that's why he didn't want to like be as
but he
honest.
said
I don't
that
know.
before. He said that stuff before. Like he said, like he
Yeah.
has this player has to do this to be like when Brandon Ayuk was struggling when he was in the doghouse. He publicly shamed them. Yeah, he needs to do. He needs to block better. He needs to do this better if he wants to see the field for me. So it's like you've done it for other people. Why not do it for Jordan Mason? Why not explain why Jordan Mason isn't playing? I thought that was a
Yeah.
great question. I was like, a lot of people are like, why isn't Mason playing? He's right now. He's been playing better than Mitchell. He's on the back burner. So
Yeah.
I'm confused.
And to me, it is a BS answer to reference the past because, in my opinion, you're a bad coach if you're making decisions on who you're playing based on how they played 2 years ago.
It kind of reminded me of Arthur Smith. When he was asked about why
Yeah.
Bijan Robinson wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Now Bijan Robinson is a much better, much higher draft pick, so like it was a very valid question for them to be asking. And he was like, "Well, he's a decoy sometimes. It makes more sense." And then they're like, "Well, so you're gonna take 2.1 yards per carry from this running back over 5 yards per carry from this running back?" He's like, "That's not the point. That's not."
Oh, you muted.
It's kind of felt like that's how I wanted to be. Um,
Yeah.
But I think Jordan Mason should be getting a lot more run with this team. Allow Christian McCaffrey to be a little bit free. from having to take so much of the workload. And I think that's something that could potentially come back to bite us in the ass for a
Yeah,
team.
because we're talking about the different in their effort and energy, and yeah, maybe some of that is a mental shift, but also there's it's a point in the season where guys are, even if you're not on the injury list, not able to play, you're banged up, you're hurting, you're a little bit more slow, and you hope that your best players have energy for the most important games. It's like, hey Kyle, you don't need to run Christian McCaffrey into the ground in September. We need him in January, and this is going to be the most important time of the season. And I do wonder if Kyle's going to use that as a reason to give him way too many way too many touches. I was going to say, how do you feel about that touchdown record kind of that he was trying to break being over? I feel like maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they'll stop pressing to get him those things, and maybe that or those touches to get touchdowns, and maybe that'll start allowing, because they did see so much success. I cannot pronounce this name because I'm
Jermaine,
really bad. Jermaine.
Jermaine,
Jermaine said they found their identity, and I thought if this is true, I thought one of the best parts about their identity finding is that normally their identity has been, we talked about it, dominant defense. They did refine their domination within that defensive line, physicality on both sides of the ball, effort and energy. Those things are all good. But a different staple of this Kyle Shanahan scheme has been kind of like the run game taking over. And I thought the smartest thing that they did last game is that they actually passed the ball way more. And with this many offensive weapons, spreading the ball out to a diverse amount of players confuses the defense. It lets other players get open. It opens up Christian McCaffrey more when you're not constantly giving him the ball, because instead of just keying in on him, people are actually looking out for other players. So then when he is getting the ball, he's even more successful. I think that was one of the top yards per carry games that he's averaged since the first 5-game winning streak, because Christian McCaffrey's yards per carry went down actually before the losing streak. He started, I think after game number 3, he started averaging like 3 yards per carry for a couple games in a row there. And I think it's just because defenses knew that the whole entire game plan was just give the ball to Christian McCaffrey. So every single play, they're just keying in on him. When you start giving throwing the ball down the field to Ayuk a little bit, throwing it to George Kittle, you're getting other players to question where the ball's going, and maybe instead of ignoring the screens, they're actually going to fall for him a little bit more, and then not Jordan Mason, unfortunately, then Christian McCaffrey can be more successful. I also wonder if Kyle Shanahan's stubbornness will allow him to, because he kind of goes both ways with those questions. Sometimes when he's questioned, like he could go one way and Jordan Mason could see the field and he could go, see, I'm letting Jordan Mason involved. Or he could like double down and be like, I'm really not going to play him now. So I'm interested to see how that works. Hopefully he gives Jordan Mason the ball before it's, something that's out of necessity. Because he did say that in his question. He was like, well, he was our number 2 running back. And it was like, well, that was because Elijah Mitchell was hurt. It wasn't
it's
like
like,
you just,
no shit. He was your number 2 running back when your number 2 was down. Oh, didn't realize the number 3 becomes the number 2. Oh, come on now. Like sometimes I feel like Kyle says stuff to the media on purpose. Like next thing you know, Jordan Mason's probably going to be heavily involved in this game plan. Like it's going to be some random ass, like he's going to get 6-7 carries and he's going to have a good game. It's just how Kyle works. But I would disagree. The Niners have not found their identity.
Okay, tell me why.
You don't have an identity off of one game.
Okay, I
So
respect that.
when we look at the first couple of weeks of the season, right? We saw week 1 through 5. They had an identity. They were playing great defense. They were trying to run the ball down your throat. They were going off of play action with Brock Purdy, just regular dropbacks. They had something going for them. They had a great defensive unit. They had the identity that they had. Now, when we look at everything, there's 2 things that I'm looking at, right? Do you really need everything to be perfect around you to have this identity? Does the defense need to be absolutely perfect? Does the run game need to be absolutely perfect? Does everything need to be perfect for this team to succeed? I'm looking at everything.
Right now, the answer feels like yes.
All right. So that means you don't have an identity. If you can't win multiple ways in the NFL, That's kind of worrisome, right? So one game back, they had 3 games in a row. We didn't know what the hell the offense was. Where the
Oh, you were heating up there too.
we didn't know what the offense was going on. Like we didn't know what the identity was for 3 weeks. 1 week back, and we can't. I can't say this is their identity. I can't because it's 1 week. I need to see it. Obviously,
You
I
want to
get
show some
we saw it for
consistency.
5 weeks to start the season. I thought like, oh, they have an identity. It's gonna be a dominant defense, a great run game, using Brock Purdy to his strengths, the play action pass game, crossing routes, and doing things that make Brock Purdy successful. And then 3 weeks ago, you lose some of your best players. You would think that same identity would continue. And identity does not matter who is on the field. The defense is going to be great. The run game is going to be great. You're going to continue to run the ball at a very good level. Now, losing Trent, obviously, that has a lot to do with it. But the identity wasn't there, and then they kind of had to figure things out on the fly. So I don't know what their identity is yet. I know it's a tough SOB style of defense. Like they're gonna punch you in the mouth, they're gonna whip your ass all damn game defensively. That's what they're gonna try to do. But what happens when that defense plays a good offense? What happens when the defense gets punched in the mouth? Can the offense back up what they've been doing all season long? Right. So that's where I'm looking at it. One game for me back from the bye week doesn't allow me to say they have their identity. Now I kind of have an idea what their identity is. We kind of have that idea. It's a great defense, run the damn ball, and put Brock Purdy in successful situations. But I can't say yet fully that that's 100% their identity because 3 weeks ago we were looking at the 49ers offense
Yeah,
like,
we're like,
whoa, can we run the ball? Can we not?
yeah.
Like, are we going to struggle this year to run the ball the rest of the way? So for me, that's where I'm
You
struggling
want them
to.
to prove it. Yeah, I feel that.
Absolutely, that's
Now,
where I'm struggling with.
do you think if they it will you feel more comfortable if they win against Tampa, or do you think because Tampa is such a lesser competition, you're going to need them to prove it not only against Tampa by playing not a tight game against Tampa, but then also coming into that next because if you when I asked the question like will the 49ers go on a run or something like that, we're more focused on maybe that 3-game Seattle Eagles Seattle stretch that's coming up and then obviously the playoffs. But when we're talking regular season, I feel like maybe earlier in the season when the 49ers were on their win streak, everyone kept talking about when's their next test. And I feel like maybe for the second half of the season, while they're trying to reestablish their standard and who they are and who they're going to be going to the playoffs, because I'd bet all my money, and I'm not a bettor, that they will make it to the playoffs. But when I'm deciding, okay, are they going to be a team that's going to go to the NFC Championship, that's going to go to the Super Bowl potentially, or are they going to be first, second round playoffs out? I think that identity might be established during that 3-game because that's when you're really going to see the team be challenged. That's why it's going to be a couple, a couple weeks away from the bye week, so they're going to be a little bit more tired, a little bit more fatigued, and you'll start to see some consistency with the second half of the season. Did they really make that mental shift? Are they able to, turn it on and off like that? Also, if they are, that's kind of scary. Why did they get in the habit of doing that? But I mean, obviously that's what they need to do at this point. So I kind of feel like you're right in my opinion. And the coaches and the players can't think like this because you can't think ahead. But as like a fan, I am interested in the game against Tampa because I'm like, okay, are you going to play down to them, or are you going to keep that force and steamroll them? But then when I'm thinking, okay, like who are you going to be? I'm kind of
Mhm.
looking ahead at those 3 games coming up. And I'm not saying that I think they could drop one of those games and it wouldn't make me think that they're terrible. But to me, it's like if you do like if they are tight games, we kind of like need to like, okay, do you drop it because in the fourth
Mhm.
quarter Brock Purdy throws another interception? Because now this is like a crazy pattern that's scary. Or do you drop it because it's just back and forth, tough it out, and one guy makes a good play at the end, or but it's a hard fought battle and everyone did the best that they could. That won't make me be like, see, they're not gonna be able to win because I'm gonna be like, hey, they stuck it out. So I'll be interested in how they play. Are you going to get blown out when you play against the Eagles? Do they just steamroll you? Because now I'm like, okay, you guys are really fraudulent. What happens if the defense doesn't get a 3 and out on the very first drive? What happens if you don't get a touchdown on the very first drive? The
How do
49ers
you
have
respond when you
proven,
get punched? That's the biggest thing. How do you
yeah,
respond?
yeah, because they're kind of like, so far they've showed that when they can be the bullies, they're dominant. But when they haven't responded when they got punched back yet. When they've
This year
met
at
a
least.
team that's not scared, yeah, this year, which is what's been shocking because we've seen them in previous years, kind of be like, the ones come being open to the fight and encouraging a fight, and now it's been kind of interesting because like talk wise, they seem to kind of be encouraging a fight, but then when you see them play, you're like, what's going on sometimes? And then you see them yesterday, or not yesterday, on Sunday, and you're like, where's that team every game? What's happening?
Mhm.
Why? It's very, it makes it draws you in, but it's definitely, when we talk about identity, it's definitely, I understand why you're hesitant to be like, I know who this team is, because they've
Yeah.
shown just such an emotional, or not even emotional, like a play roller coaster.
And I wouldn't
Um,
necessarily, because I know you did ask a little question in there. If I would look at their identity different if it's a close game with the Bucks, I actually won't. What I'll more so look at them as is maybe they're not as good as I think they are. And what I mean by
okay.
that is, so if they come out and they're running the ball, they're effectively running the ball, they're playing great defense, um, but they're giving up points, I might look at them like, maybe the Jags just weren't that good, and maybe the Jags maybe had a bad day. Maybe the Jags woke up and ate the wrong cereal and had a bad day, and maybe we're not as good as I think we are. That's what I mean by I'll look at them a little differently, because I have to ask that question if it's that close of a game. But when I turn on the film and I'm watching the Bucks aren't good. So it's like the Bucks are not a good team. They're a gritty team. They try to make it a fight. But I won't look at the Niners differently in the sense of their identity if they're doing what they're supposed to do in terms of defense is playing great, offense is running the ball, but Tampa is just making great plays and they're having themselves a good game. I won't look at their identity different. I'll more so look at the 49ers and be like, are we as good as I think we are? Are we really a contender? Like that's all. That's kind of what I mean by I'll look at us differently. When I said if it's a closer game to Tampa, I'll look at us in the sense of maybe there's things that I'm missing, and maybe the tackling issue is a reason why we're not as good, or maybe this is a
Yeah.
reason why we're not as good as we are. Maybe when we do play the best
How they
teams, we're
lose
gonna struggle.
how they lose will be interesting too, because I think aside from Nick Bosa really showing out last game, stopping the run has been a giant problem for this team this year. Um, and that's something that they were able to fix, yes, or on, I keep saying yesterday, on Sunday. So it'll be interesting, like, is this problem over, or was that, kind of good luck against Jacksonville? I hate to be like hindsight police, but I do think potentially people gave Jacksonville a little bit too much credit going into that game. They're obviously so much more successful than they were, 2 years ago. I think if I was a Jacksonville fan, I'd be very proud and happy of the success that my team is having. But I don't think when we're trying to assess 49ers being Super Bowl contenders, I
Mhm.
don't think that the standard is Jacksonville.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree in this, but I do think Jacksonville. I think that was a big win. That was a statement win in the sense of I think Jacksonville was a top 10, around the 7, 8 range of the teams in the NFL. I think they're that good of a
okay,
team.
I like that.
But I just think when you see a team get whooped on that, like for example, Dallas, when we whooped on Dallas,
Yeah,
does that make Dallas a terrible team? Nah, I think Dallas just had a bad day. Like looking at
yeah.
them, I think they just had a bad. If we were to go back and play that game again, I don't think we're blowing them out by that many. Like we're not going to do that again to them. It's going to be a closer game. It's going to be a hard fought game because these teams are really good. The Niners just whooped on them that given Sunday. So that's kind of what I look at. It's like I kind of take into consideration as to when I'm watching the game back, because the Jags are a good team. Watching them on film, they're a good team. So I don't, and I think we're that good of a team. But that's what I'm saying. Like we're that good of a team where we could whoop on the team. I think we're in the top four. So when you're playing the 8th, 9th, 10th best teams in the league, you should whoop on them because you're that good of a team. So that's where I'm kind of looking at the Niners right now. And if they
I would
struggle,
also I'd never wish injury on this, so this isn't a good thing, but I think you and I have talked about this before, kind of like, is this the year for the Niners? Not only when you look at the age of their players and the play of the NFL around,
Mhm.
but another team kind of just got, with Joe Burrow being out for the season, that's just one less team that the 49ers have to worry about. Right now, it seems like, in my opinion, when I think of like the boogeyman for the 49ers, I'm thinking about Philly and I'm thinking about the Chiefs. Because the Chiefs are one team.
I'm thinking Baltimore.
Baltimore? Yeah, that's true. That'll be a
I'm
hard
thinking
one for them.
Baltimore.
That'll be a
I'm
hard one
thinking
for them.
we,
That'll
we
be a hard one
struggle
for them.
we struggle against mobile quarterbacks. They can run the ball effectively.
They did just lose Mark Andrews.
Yeah, they did, but Isaiah likely will step up. He's a good tight end.
Okay.
Not going to be as good as Mark Andrews, obviously, but I think he could be a fill-in guy. Their defense is phenomenal. They were missing Marlon Humphreys yesterday, and they held Jamar Chase to one catch, 10 yards. Like, that's how good of a team they are.
This is it's like a flaw that I have. Because I'm not necessarily, I think like the regular season game against Baltimore will be really difficult, and I could totally see the Niners. I think before the season, when I looked at that, I checked that as a loss, just knowing this was before I even knew how the 49ers were going to be inconsistent. I was just like, 49ers against their defense against a mobile quarterback like Lamar Jackson, that's going to be hell for them. What I more meant is when they go to the playoffs, and if they did get to the Super Bowl, who do I think would really be preventing them? I think right now, if like the playoffs were just to start right now, that the 49ers would go against the Cowboys. Do you believe in that? And maybe they kind of proved this wrong last year because they beat the Seahawks 3 times in a row. Do you believe, because we were just kind of talking about that game, that would be a challenging opponent in the playoffs for the 49ers? Or would you prefer, like, if they had to go against like the Lions or the Cowboys, which team would you prefer that the 49ers face?
I would rather play the Lions.
Okay.
And the reason
just
is
Jared Goff, or
Jared Goff's over there. I know we could get to him. I know we could get in his head. So I'm looking at that. I think Dak Prescott is on a run. Since the Niners game, he's been on a run. I think that team is good.
He's like, I'm tired of answering these questions.
He's really good. Niners like to hate. Niner fans like to hate on Dak because he's a Cowboy. But if Dak Prescott was a Niner,
they would have had a Super Bowl.
We'd be no, not necessarily Super Bowl, but the Niner fans would be calling him a top 3 quarterback right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like
that's like Brock Purdy's skill set, but more maybe. I mean, I don't know about to sit like. I don't know if we can say that because we haven't seen a large enough sample size of Brock Purdy compared. Maybe not a fair comparison, but I think when you think about how 49er fans talk about Brock Purdy, I don't think that Dak's, at least talent-wise, is lesser than Brock Purdy.
I mean, looking at Brock,
I feel like maybe there's people in the comments that are like, "What?" Because I know people hate on Dak, but just like arm strength-wise and mobility-wise, like he is a good quarterback.
Much better quarterback than Brock Purdy. I'll say, I know what you're trying to say. He has much better talent than Brock Purdy. He has a stronger arm. He's more he's just as mobile.
Like less afraid. You're less afraid.
I know you're trying to like tiptoe the line. He's a stronger arm quarterback. He has the arm. He has the size, the mobility. You probably just as smart of a quarterback in terms of processing ability. Like, it is what it is, and I'm telling you, it's because he's a Cowboys fan that a lot of fans will say he is not good. If he was playing for any other team, we would be saying he's a good quarterback. He's thrown 17 touchdowns to 6 interceptions this year. He's pushing the ball downfield. He's completing 70% of his passes, which is higher than Brock. He has 105.
And he has way less weapons. But like not as he doesn't have Kyle Shanahan. Like all these.
So I'm saying,
I'm not saying. I think pretty.
I love Dak. I love Dak.
Oh, look, the fans got so mad they muted you. They were like, stop with the Dak love. Stop with the Dak love.
I think he's a hell of a quarterback. I just hate that he's a Cowboy. Like, literally, like that's the only downfall on him. He's a Cowboy. But I think I would rather play the Lions, unproven, the Debo, CJ Garner beef. I know who's coming out. I know who's coming out on top of that game. Like I would guarantee a Niner win if we play the Lions.
CJ Garner like on IR? Why is he? I don't even know if he's playing right now.
I don't know if he's playing right now either, but I just know I know how the Niners are going to react if they play the Lions. Like it's personal. Like for Debo, and the Niners have Debo's back, so that's the thing that I guarantee.
Yeah. They like rally around. They
rally. Sure. The thing is, the Niners like to be low key. Like to be instigators. and they like to back it up. Now, that's like their style. Like they like to play the underdog mentality, but the reality is they
Yeah.
like to instigate a lot of things. For example, Tampa obviously started practice a little bit earlier because they're in the East Coast. They're blasting Tony Montana. The Niners start practice. What are they blasting? Tony Montana. Like, you're gonna tell me, sit here and tell me that our DJ decided, you know what, I'm playing Tony Montana today. They saw that the media saw that they were blasting Tony Montana out there. That's been a well-known 49ers song in terms of our days with Jim Harbaugh and that unit in the hit squad. Um, so they saw it as a personal jab. Like it is what it is.
I kind
They
of love how sports. I feel like that's such a big thing in sports. I did college athletics, and even we did that. Like, you kind of have to find little ways to like get an edge. And
if
I
you're
like that because we're talking about we don't want the 49ers to play down to their competition. We don't want them to overlook Tampa. So if in their minds they're like, hey, this isn't that good of a team, they have to come up with these little jabs in order to get them, hype. If it works, then it works. If it doesn't, then I'm like, okay, come on. Like, you should. I understand. I feel like so many people have the opinion, like, you're a professional, you should just be able to kind of turn it on. But I always, when people say that, I always think, how do you do when you're performing your own work? If you have a goal, if there's some sort of, if we talk about Chase Young, if you have a friend, or if
Mhm.
you have, I'm gonna meet this quota, I'm gonna get a bonus, or I was a teacher in middle school, and I was like, okay, like, if this many of my students perform well, that's like really gratifying to me, and it does make you kind of having those benchmarks. That's why benchmarks exist, right? It keeps your head in the game, for a lack of a better word. So I like that the 49ers are doing that. I didn't see the Tony Montana thing, but that's hilarious.
Yeah, you got to be a little, as an athlete, you got to be a little cuckoo. And what I mean by that, you got to find things that make you believe that the other person's talking shit. Like, it makes you play harder. It makes it like you're trying to prove something. Like, hey, for example,
Did
if
you
someone
see they Bosa said that him and Baker like squashed the beef? Do you believe that?
I believe it. I believe it because it's
So
different.
annoying.
It's different. It's different when you meet someone and you realize like they're actually a cool dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's different. Like, right? Like they chopped it up. They were at I believe it was at a camp. Talked a little bit. And they realized like, you know what, we're very alike. We're very humble dudes. We're very chill dudes. I planted the flag on the Buckeye because we played you guys and you guys kept whooping our ass a couple of years before, whatever. We haven't been able to beat you guys. We finally beat you guys. That was a big win. It was more. To me. It was
Yeah.
more so. You guys were talking talk during the game. I finished the talk. I got the last laugh, kind of thing. So it's gonna be fun. The Niners are they're gonna be playing against, like you said earlier, against um, two very good defensive linebackers, Levante David, and the other. I cannot think of his name. But two very good linebackers who was also drafted in the first round. Um, it's all about how do they play, in my opinion, um, because their roster is led by those two dudes, um, Levante David, and I'm gonna get his name on the
Devin
top of my
White.
head right now.
Devin
Yeah,
White or
Devin
Sharp.
White, Devin
Yeah.
White. Um, so when I'm looking at it is for me, it's all about the opportunity to not turn the ball over to those linebackers because those linebackers they're gonna punch the
Yeah.
ball out. They're gonna do what they can. If the Niners win the turnover battle, like I said, they blow them out by 14 points this week.
I'm gonna ask you. We're gonna do some predictions right before we leave, but right before I ask you about that when it comes to turnovers, did you hear in the press conference? Kyle Shanahan did say that they're thinking about not even thinking, but he pretty much guaranteed, without guaranteeing it, that they're gonna sign Jason Verrett to the practice squad. How do you feel about that? Kind of interesting because the Texans just let him go. What do you think? I can't hear you. I can hear you. Which is weird because he's not muted. Is it hooked up to your phone again? Mm, mm,
What about
mm,
now? Can you hear me?
mm. Oh, there you go.
All right,
Yeah.
for sure. I think it's interesting because a lot of people on 49ers Twitter were like, "Oh, Jason Verrett coming in it's gonna lock down the 49ers secondary. We're gonna be a better team because of it." I'm like, wait, we
I
talking
think
about the
it's
same?
much more of like a sentimental signing than like
I
a
was looking at it. I'm
actual.
like, wait, are we talking about the same as Jason Verrett? The Jason Verrett who's torn his ACL 2 times and tore his Achilles 2 times on the same leg. Like, how do we know he's really back to himself? Like, we haven't seen him since 2021. And even in that year, it was one game, and it tore his ACL. I believe it was his ACL that year, Achilles that year. But
Achilles.
looking at him, it might have been his Achilles. But looking at Jason Verrett, like, he's a good player when healthy, but he's also on the back end of his career in the upper age of NFL players. Once you hit
Yeah,
30,
he's in his.
you're already over the hump. Like, you're no longer that. But then the injuries on top of it, I think it's an interesting signing. I think it's more so, can we catch lightning in a bottle? That's literally how
I
I
think
see it.
I saw it as, to be honest, I saw it as like a sentimental, and you would think that teams don't do this, but I feel like under Kyle Shanahan, who was the guy? He was I think he was a wide receiver, and then he turned into a tight end or
Jordan
something. He was
Matthews.
on. Yeah, like he was on the team for a long time. He would always go. Wait, I know he was the guy that Trey Lance threw to during his
Mm-hmm.
college thing, but he was always the guy that was practicing with the different QBs in the offseason that Kyle Shanahan would go send to work with different people. And I feel like the 49ers, I think they kind of have this with Elijah Mitchell right now. I think they get these like players that, for lack of a better word, because I know this technically shouldn't exist because it is a business, but I do think that the 49ers have a little bit of this like loyalty family environment to certain guys. And I feel like they've had that with Jason Verrett, because they've continued to bring him back regardless of his injuries, regardless of the amount of time that he's been able to play for them. And I kind of think that they feel, I don't see him as someone that they think is that they're going to rely on in the playoffs. I think that they think, hey, we want to do right by this player because we like him. Kyle Shanahan really talked about, he said when he was working out that different players went and watched him work out. He talked about, and even a reporter asked about like the mental morale that he brings to the team. So I think Kyle Shanahan is like, hey, we can bring him in to be a guy in the room because all these younger guys will respect him. The
Yep.
veterans already love him. He's going to be, we're going to do right by paying him, and he's going to be like a practice squad guy. He's kind of, that's the vibe I got from the press conference. To me, it didn't seem like Kyle was like crossing our fingers he's going to like show up in the playoffs for us. To me, it seemed like kind of something, obligation is not the right way to say it, but like something like this
It
is
was more so a
a
respect
moral
signing,
family
and I
guy.
get what you're
Yeah.
saying. And then the interesting, that's how kind of I saw it, as more so a coach on the field. JV being that veteran who could coach up the young guys like Demo, Ambry Thomas, Luter, who definitely needs some knowledge from an old vet, who's a young rookie, Samuel Womack. So just definitely teaching up the young guys is definitely a key thing. And if you go back to look at Kyle, I think it's more so Kyle who keeps dudes that are close to him, right? Tevin Coleman, he brought him in. Tevin Coleman was around for a little while. Mohamed Sanu was around for a little while. He would sign him wherever he got cut. He would have him signed. So just looking at that, I think Dante Johnson, he was around for how many years, right? Like, it's something that Kyle and the 49ers, they like having a good locker room, and I think that goes a long way for the 49ers. They understand if you have, for example, going towards basketball terminology, right? If you have David West in your locker room, you're not gonna have the young dudes acting up, not showing up for team meetings, being
Yeah.
late. You have the veteran. You're like, hey, what the hell are you doing? Like, that's kind of the mentality that they're hoping Jason Verrett brings to the locker room, which he will. But I just thought it was interesting because I saw people on 49ers Twitter. They're like, oh, he's gonna change our secondary. I'm like, we're talking about the same player. Like, let's be real. He's 32 years old. He's coming off four major injuries to the same leg. Like, I don't see much from the Jason Verrett signing, but interesting. I see it more as interesting
Yeah.
signing.
That's how I felt too. It felt like news that wasn't news. And you're right. It was interesting that some fans like were like, "Oh, this is a huge deal." And I was like, I feel like this is going to be a very background move. Very like that. But we're going to end it on the over under game. I'll just ask you a couple quick questions. I've done this with Rohan. I stole it from a popular content creator, but I just always like
Who'd you
watching
take it?
them
Who'd you take
and
it from? Grant,
Jesse and them. Yeah.
Jesse, and Grant.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
dope.
My dad and I always would play along, and I'm not like a real better, but we would like bet like an acai bowl or milkshake or dinner the next day or something like that. So, um, we talked a lot about pathways to victory for the 49ers. We talked about some changes that the 49ers made. When we're talking about changes on offense, a huge thing they did was protect the ball last week. So I'm going to start with that. Over or under 0.5 interceptions for Brock Purdy. What do you think? You just
0.5.
meaning like, will he throw one interception?
I'm gonna go over.
Okay.
And it's not gonna be like, no disrespect. I know people are gonna see it like, oh well, he's a Brock hater. Of course he's gonna say over. I just think
Yeah,
he's gonna
but
try
we
to
just
be
talked about their linebackers and how excellent they are.
I just think he's gonna try to push the ball a little bit down the field. When you start pushing the ball downfield, you risk for big plays. I think an interception is very possible with who they have on their defense. Now like I said, they don't have a great secondary, but they have players who can make plays. Someone makes a play on their defense.
Okay, I could see. I think I'm gonna disagree, and I'm gonna go under. Mostly because I think they're just gonna be up by so much. But I mean, you made an excellent case. I was gonna say under, and then when you were talking, I was like, oh, I completely agree with everything you're saying. Maybe I'll do it. I think they're still gonna win by a ton. No, I'm gonna go under. I think he's gonna throw because Brock Purdy, his luck has a lot to do with this. So I think he's gonna give them opportunities potentially, but I don't think they're gonna catch it. I'm gonna go under. But I think you're right. I think it's very possible that he just shoots one up because I do think that they're gonna be testing down the field a little bit more, and I have respect for those linebackers. But I'm gonna go now. Let's look at Baker Mayfield. He's probably going to be getting a lot of pressure. Potentially, those guys are on our defense are going to be getting home. Do we think Baker Mayfield over or under? I want to go 1.5 interceptions just to make it more challenging. So, do you
1.5.
think he's going to throw one interception or more than one? Is that fair, or should I have
No,
gone
it's
with
it's fair, it's
0.5?
fair, because especially, I mean, our defense got a few interceptions last week, so it's fair.
Yeah, they're leading the
Um,
league. Did you know that the 49ers are leading the league in takeaways right now?
that's
I didn't
crazy. I would
realize.
have never have
Yeah,
thought about that, but, hey,
me
remember people
neither.
were criticizing Steve Wilkes and his defense, huh? Um, so I'm gonna go under. I think 1.5. It's usually you don't see quarterbacks throw 2 interceptions unless it's a shitty game. I don't think he's gonna have a shitty game, so I'm gonna go he likely throws an interception, but he's been taking care of the ball, very well. I'm gonna go under. It'll be 1 or less.
Okay. I want to go I want to go over because I think what's going to happen is he'll probably throw like one in the first 3 quarters. It won't be like so damaging that it kills them, but it'll just be like one on accident. And then I think they'll end up falling really behind and he might throw like a Hail Mary type intercept. Oh, no, you're right. I'll go under. You convince me. I'll go under.
Yeah,
I think he's going to throw
I'm
one.
just looking at his stats. He's only thrown 1 interception in the 5 games he's, had interceptions. So looking at it, he only has 5 interceptions in the year, aside for Brock, but it's his games are usually just 1 interception, and he kinda, like, shies away from probably throwing the ball. I haven't really watched
Okay.
him, but
Yeah, they might take the ball out of his hand. I think Todd Bowles goes towards running the ball more because he's more defensive minded. So you're right. I'll go under for that as well. So right now, Brock Purdy is what we have. Now, what about Nick Bosa? Do you think he's gonna get home on Baker Mayfield? Over or under 0.5 sacks for Nick Bosa?
Nick
He kind
Bosa
of
is
had
gonna
a
have he's gonna have over half a sack, so he'll have a full sack. I think Chase Young also has a sack, and I'm gonna throw in I think Arik Armstead has a sack. So that's 3 sacks just alone from those 3
I
players.
love that. I love that. I love that. Okay, wow. Okay, I want to go. I completely agree with you. I think that the defensive line is going to have a really good game. The Buccaneers have a pretty decent offensive line. They're not at the top of the pack, but they're definitely not at the bottom. They're about where the 49ers are. And they've had some success. I was reading it was David Lombardi's tweet, but they've had some success on the right side of Baker protecting him, but I do think that the way the 49ers are going to scheme it up that Mayfield might get rattled. He's not super mobile. And I could see them getting to him, or at least one of them pushing them into the other. I kind of think it'll be like one of those things where Eric Armstead gets a sack, but it's actually because Javon Hargrave pushed him into
Yeah.
it, or Nick Bosa will get a sack, but it's because you know what I mean. I think they'll all end up getting one, but it might be because they're all working in tandem together. Um, Now let's move on to Mike Evans over under 0.5 touchdowns for Mike Evans.
Over. I think Mike Evans is gonna touchdown this game. Mike Evans he's a really good receiver. Looking at Mike Evans, he's one of the. I think he's gonna go down as a Hall of Fame receiver. The career he's put up has been phenomenal. 1,000 yards in I believe 10 straight seasons, maybe more. On pace for another 1,000 yard season. Um, Definitely going to go over on that one. I think Mike Evans against our secondary, who has given up big plays, has given up touchdowns to receivers. Mike Evans over a touchdown.
I really quick just wanted to bring up this. He said, for sure, the Chase and Bosa dynamic is exciting. I also find it exciting, so I just wanted to bring some attention to that. I think Mike Evans is going to get a touchdown. Now, do you think that the 49ers are going to keep having the pig in the pickle guy eating his lunch money? Do you think Brandon Ayuk is going to get a touchdown over under
I hope
0.5
I hope I
touchdowns?
hope he does just so Larry Krueger is getting pie in his face in the sense of he went rogue on Vish, explaining how mid of a season Brandon Ayuk is having. I think he has a touchdown, and I think he's gonna go more than a 15 yard. It'll be like at least like a 16+ yard touchdown.
I think Brandon Ayuk I'm going to predict that he does, and I definitely hope that he does get a touchdown as well. We kind of established earlier, if given the opportunity, I think he'll make it happen, and hopefully after the success that they had with distributing the ball last game, that they'll do more of that. I also know that I kind of made a joke about Larry Krueger right there, but I do enjoy him and enjoy his show, and I love all the content creators. I just thought that little conversation was kind of silly. Although, and I feel like if you would have phrased it better, I might have even agreed with him, because I mean, I've kind of debated you on like whether or not they should sign Brandon Ayuk, and I've debated other people on maybe not thinking Brandon Ayuk is as talented as some fans agree with him. So I feel like I could have been on Larry's side, but just like the way that he went about trying to make his case came from like, I don't know. It's frustrating when people can't kind of reason or maybe make a valid argument for their point.
And what's crazy is it
So
was he didn't want to hear the other side of the argument.
no.
Well, that's the thing that's crazy. He just wanted to hear his side of the argument, in my opinion. That's from kind of what I got from it. So that's why I think it's funny that Brandon, you got a touchdown right after he said that.
Okay, really quick. I want to read, because I never read his chats, but this is my dad. He said, I also think Baker will throw 2 or maybe more. My dad is out on Baker, which is
Damn.
crazy. My dad and I like debated Baker like 2 years ago, and my dad was like really high on Baker when Baker was in on the Panthers. They'll be behind. He'll try to do too much in the fourth quarter. That's kind of what I was saying when I think I ended up agreeing with you and only going with one. But if I was using that logic, I would agree with my dad, where I think he might throw one in the regular, like when the game is intact, and then if he does throw more, it'll be kind of trying to like do a Hail Mary type thing. I think if he was on the Panthers, that would be more likely, but the player that he's been on the Bucks, with the way that Todd Bowles seems to play call, I think maybe Todd Bowles takes away Baker's opportunity to do that by taking the ball out of his hands in those situations. Also, I think Baker's trying to be better with the ball, because I think he realized like, hey, I might be out of the league if I keep playing like this. So Chris Godwin, do we think that he is going to get a touchdown over
No, I
under?
don't.
Okay.
I think under on Chris Godwin. I don't see them scoring more than 2 touchdowns. And for me to say Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, I don't think so. So I think Chris Godwin on the under. And I think it's because they're going to try to take away Chris Godwin and more so force Mike Evans to be that guy that goes crazy on them, which is an interesting thing, but kind of interesting to see how they defend it, because Chris Godwin, when he's going, that offense is completely different. It opens up everything for them, in my opinion. So take away Chris Godwin, force Mike Evans to beat you, which is very possible for Mike Evans to have a crazy game. So
Okay. I'm gonna end it unless you have any other predictions that you want. I'm gonna say my score prediction. Unless, do you have any other over unders that you wanna kind of talk about right now? Let's do Kittle, because Kittle is always such an interesting one, because I feel like he can always get a touchdown, but he's one of the ones also that doesn't get opportunities. So over under 0.5 touchdowns for George Kittle.
Did he have a touchdown last week? Did he?
I don't. Yeah,
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 he
yeah,
did.
yeah,
Then I'm going under.
yeah.
Kid only scoring 2
Okay.
touchdowns 2 games in a row.
I kind of want to go under 2, but that makes me really mad. Okay, over under really quick. 4 targets for Kittle. Or no, let's do 5 because he got 4 last game. Do you think he'll get over 4 targets? Not necessarily in the
Um,
red zone, but just targets in the game.
over 4?
Yeah. Believe it or not, he rarely gets over 4. I know that
I'll
seems
say
like a low
yeah.
number.
I'll say over
I hope
4.
so
He'll
too.
get 5
I
targets.
think I think winning formula for the 49ers is George Kittle gets more than 4 targets. And I think the 49ers are going to blow out Tampa. And I think maybe they learned something from their last game when they distributed the ball. So I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to go over. Kyle Shanahan, do not disappoint me. I can see that being under really easily, but I'm giving Kyle Shanahan a little bit of credit, and I'm hoping that he learned from last game. And then I'm going to say, I think the 49ers are going to score 31. I think that the Bucks are going to score 13.
I mean, yeah,
31-13.
I can see that. I
So
have
I'm
28.
predicting that seems like a lot, huh? Maybe I'm
I
not
think
giving
20. I think
enough credit.
28-14.
28-14.
That's that's
Okay.
that's the kind of game I think. I think maybe 14-point game. I don't really like giving score predictions, so when I usually do it, if I think they're gonna win by 14, I make it a fair number where
I like
it's
that.
by 14. I don't like giving score predictions because you end up having late minute like last minute drive.
Yeah, things happen. Yeah.
A team's down 20 points and then they end up scoring, and now your score prediction's completely
Yeah.
off. So I like to give a
Well, I'm
point
really gonna
spread.
hold you to your score predictions, so don't worry
I
about
mean,
that.
there's people who do on Twitter.
If it makes you feel better, Rohan and I do this like every week, and we're always extremely wrong about everything. And I was gonna say no one hold him to it, and then I was just like, wow, I held you to your Zach Wilson
You
take. You have every
did, you
right to be
did,
guarded. You're
you
like, hey,
did.
what the
I was
heck?
like, damn, that was a wild shot right there. He talked about Zach
It was
Wilson on the
so
show,
funny.
and then it gets dropped
It
on
was
Twitter. I was like, damn, that's
it
crazy.
was, it was so funny. I had such a great time talking to you today, Marco. I took up so much of your time while you're wedding planning. Everyone, go subscribe to Marco, read everything he does, follow him on Twitter, give him a giant congratulations in a couple weeks when he has such a big day. And everyone, like and subscribe to this channel. I'll probably do something small tomorrow, and then I'll definitely have a instant reaction coming on Sunday, and it's going to be a really busy week with the short week and everything. So make sure to like and subscribe. I hit over 1,000 followers subscribers
Nice.
last week, and been trying to put out as much content and engage as much as possible. I've really appreciated all the support and the kindness from this community, especially from guys like Marco, who have such limited time and still come on and give me a lot of theirs and entertain my funny little games, even though they know it might come back to bite them.
Thanks for having me on, Ashley. Appreciate it. Definitely go Niners, and hopefully they pick up another dub on the way to the playoffs.
Hell yeah. Go Niners. Everyone have a great Friday.